joined by Rear Admiral Mark Montgomery, retired United States Navy after 32 years of service in the uniform. He's now at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, where he's a senior fellow. Admiral, you've been around for the five big conflicts that I've been around for: Panama, and then we've got the Yugoslavia air campaign, Afghanistan, Iraq, and then the Libyan campaign, 2011. What is different about this war than those wars?
I think that's a great question because the issue is we're trying to do an air-only campaign here, and we've got 6 good lines of effort. Raising Care, Dan Kane laid them out. Not saying 6, but laid them out. IRGC, leadership and facilities is 1. 2 is suppression of enemy air defense, which I think we're almost near block checked. Is 2. 3 is the ballistic missile capabilities, facilities, and production. That's 3. That's the big one right now. Then drone facilities, capabilities, and production. That's 4. And then the 5th one is the Iranian Navy, and then the 6th one is the interesting one here, which is how do you support the protesters? This is different than, like, I was involved in Libya. I was at UCOM when it happened, and I was involved with Kosovo. And in both cases, we had an armed insurgency on the ground. The KLA in Kosovo, who were, I know all their friends of mine now. Those are some tough guys ready to fight. And a former army kind of armed insurrectionists in Libya in 2011. We do not have that condition in Iran right now. So I don't know that 6th line of effort gets exploited unless they get armed either by Israeli or U.S. Title 50 or intelligence community forces.
Admiral, I saw earlier today reports that Israel is bombing along the Kurdish border between Iraqi Kurdistan and Iranian Kurdistan, the idea being that perhaps Kurdish forces might cross over. What would that mean to Turkey? Turkey's one of our 3 disappointing allies. Spain's the worst. UK is a close second, but Turkey's playing it both ways. What would that mean if the Kurds crossed over?
So I don't think you did good justice to Hungary on that one, but I'll say Turkey's the worst of all those by a lot.
Okay.
The Turks are, they're going to become unglued if we create a Kurdish problem for them in this. I mean, now my answer to them is, hey, you could have been a lot more helpful at every step of the way in this crisis. You've been unhelpful. You've been damaging to Israel. You have not been a good ally to the United States in any way, shape, or form. And so my empathy factor for them is pretty low. I don't know what the Israeli long-term plan there is, because that's creating chaos, and chaos has a value in the moment, but later on that chaos could have a negative value for us. So I'm hesitant to say that I know that's going to be a useful action by the Israelis.
All right, now, Admiral, this goes back to your time at the Cyber Solarium when you were the executive director. A closed totalitarian society, Iran, with the secret police, thoroughly penetrated. I gather the Israelis took control of their closed caption TV and followed around Khamenei's bodyguard. There's a lot of stuff that they knew and a lot of stuff that we knew. If they're a closed totalitarian society, how vulnerable are we to this kind of surveillance and measures?
I have a feeling, Hugh, that you're not watching enough Apple TV, because if you're watching Tehran, you would know the Israelis have the Iranians. Absolutely. I mean, by the way, so much that is in that streaming show just shows up here. I wonder sometimes about Mossad. But look, they clearly had him penetrated. And give us some credit too. General Kane's emphasis on the non-kinetic aspects meant, I mean, we kind of did the blunt force object of you cannot communicate. You cannot see your space assets. They did the scalpel work, the Israelis. We know exactly where you are. We know who's coming to this meeting, and we know that it is time to strike 3.5 hours from now. So they're the scalpel, we're the sledgehammer, and between us, that was a pretty non-kinetic butt kicking.
Yes. Now, Admiral, I have a column for Fox News tomorrow that restates again, objectively, the facts of 1991, when then President George H.W. Bush, then Secretary of Defense Cheney, and then Chairman of the Joint Chiefs Powell called a halt to the first Gulf War after 100 hours. And the debate about that goes on. I don't want to reopen that debate. I am afraid, however, that there's a temptation for political actors to end things too soon. Is that at work here?
100, you hit it, Hugh. That is my biggest concern. We stopped the 12-day war 12 days too soon. That after we did Fordo, we should have joined in, at least at a minimum, provided refueling aircraft, continued refueling aircraft, and strategic bombers to support continued Israeli strikes on that. Remember that when I talked about ballistic missile production, drone production. The reason they're shooting back with good numbers at us is we have not stopped that. We haven't eliminated the current stuff and rubbleized everything that could build future stuff. We need to make it clear that there will be no missile or drone activity from a future Iranian state. And the way you do that is a 4 to 6 week campaign. 3 weeks solid, and near the end of it, you're doing battle damage assessment and then restriking at a lower level for about a week to 2 weeks. Then you declare victory. The propensity for presidents to declare victory early will hurt us here. We need to carry through on this. Even if it's clear to us after some point that there's not going to be a popular revolt against the leadership, we have to continue the strike campaign until our military says we've achieved the other 5 lines of effort I set out.
What do you think China is seeing we're 60 hours into this, so there's not a lot to conclude, but the People's Republic of China and the CCP are watching. What are they concluding?
Well, first, it turns out they didn't have that much control over Iran because I think they've been signaling to Iran nonstop, Morse code, carrier pigeon, whatever they can get to them.
Huh.
Do not close the Straits of Hormuz. And the Straits of Hormuz are effectively being closed by the Iranians right now. And let me tell you, this is like when they do this, this is like the old, scorpion riding the back of the frog. When the Iranians, killed the frog and closed the Straits of Hormuz, they drowned, right? Because their economy is as dependent on it as any other. Maybe the Qatari economy is as equally dependent. So they're hurting themselves, but they're killing China, right? This Venezuela was a little bit of a ding on China. This is a big ding on China's supply. That's where this Iranian oil was going at a very discounted freight cost, and they're going to lose that. So China's got to be frustrated. I think they kind of knew the Russian and Chinese weapons in Iranian hands were not performing well against high-end U.S. and Israeli equipment, and they're getting another lesson in that. I will say also, this is a reminder. I just got back from 3 weeks in Ukraine. There's a lot you can learn in Ukraine, and some of it was applied here, but there's a lot that isn't about Ukraine. Sometimes just having a butt-kicking air power capability capacity anchored in our U.S. Air Force, supported by our U.S. Navy and Marine Corps, is critical to winning wars against high-end adversaries.
Admiral, we used the B-1. I don't know how many B-1s we have. I got 20 B-2s on my bingo card. What does the B-1 do that the B-2 doesn't, or is it the same function?
I think it was doing the same function. I mean, I think the B-1's like, hey, suppression of enemy air defense complete. I'm coming in. It carries a lot of weapons, probably around the B-2 capacity, not like a B-52, but it does a lot. And look, we have anywhere operational. I'm guessing, I don't know, so it's not a classified number, but around 19 or 20 probably there good to go. But the deal is the B-2 you have to keep some of them for your nuclear readiness deterrence thing. So like let the B-2s, be doing their nuclear stuff, and then some B-2s doing the conventional, B-1s picking it up. I'm comfortable with this. I'm confident they're putting a whole bunch of JDAM on target. The B-1s they carry a lot of precision guided munitions. And so, I'm excited to have them in there as well. By the way, that counts for a lot of fighter sorties in one bomber mission.
Now, Admiral, I've asked Senator Cotton this earlier about a supplemental or a reconciliation bill to beef up the munition stockpiles, and we'll talk during the break about Golden Dome. Do you think that is going to be necessary? Because we're using a lot of ordnance.
Absolutely. And I'll back up to that whole Red Sea year and a half. We shot a year's worth of procurement in the Red Sea alone last year and the year before, each of those years. And now we're doing it again on the offensive side. So, with the strike weapon. So we should have a munition, now look, the reconciliation is helping with munitions, but I think this is a very specific buy back the $500 million to $1 billion worth of munitions you spend over each week, probably in this contest. Absolutely, you should do that. That's pretty typical. that you'd have a supplemental for a wartime expenditure like this.
All right, I'll be right back with Admiral Montgomery during the break to ask him about Golden Dome and how quickly we have to move on that, given what we've seen right here. But don't go anywhere, except stay tuned to the Salem News channel. If you've missed any or all of the conversations today, they're all over at my YouTube channel, at Hugh Hewitt, YouTube. I'll be right back with the Admiral during the break. After the break, Bethany Mandel joins me, then John Podhoretz. Stay tuned. I'll be right back with Admiral Mark Montgomery. Admiral Ronald Reagan and Edward Teller are smiling today because of what Israel is doing. They've suffered civilian casualties, but they're shooting everything down. They got lasers working, all sorts of stuff. What's that tell us about Golden Dome and how much of a priority it ought to be and how soon we can get it deployed?
So first, this validates President Trump's commitment to Golden Dome during his campaign and immediately upon his election with the executive order. It also validates his selection of Mike Gutlein, General Gutlein, as the leader, because Gutlein has laid out a very explicit plan. You can see it to get up into space, like President Reagan knew we needed to be. The cost of launch has been dropped. The reason I say this, if you're up in space, the same assets can do forward deployed, defend your forces in the Middle East, in the Pacific, in Europe, and the homeland. We want to fight our adversary not in the homeland. So we want to be able to defend our forward deployed forces. So his theory of a space-based system, both satellites and effectors to shoot down things, base in space, supported by a strong, what's called an underlayer of terrestrial radars and sometimes shooters for point defense is important. And maybe getting dirigibles in there, in the up to really good vision. That is where Mike Gutlein is headed. And it's validated by this. Look, it's terrible that our troops got killed. I think we're going to find out by a short-range ballistic missile that hit a ops center. But the truth is there's not enough Patriot and THAAD that you can buy to point defend everything everywhere all at once. And with that in mind, the space base really gives you that more comprehensive, holistic approach. It's going to take time. I'm afraid the president will not. It will be after January 2029 before it's a truly effective system. But this is the president giving his successors the systems they need to fight and win against adversaries like China, Russia, North Korea, and if Iran survives, Iran in the future. So I'm not excited, but I believe this validates and proves the theory that a lot of us have been pushing, and that General Gutlein is championing as head of Golden Dome.
For full shows, live and on demand, it's Salem News Channel.